Alrighty here, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Cabal. I've been aware of the Cabal for a while. I've heard about their reputation. I've seen their videos, the whole kink of boodle, not only on Facebook, but through the Temple of Living God, through the interviews that E.A. Quetting and a few others have had, especially through Curtis Joseph and so forth and like that, including with the Grand Master of the Cabal, Sumnus Dreadwood, who's the Grand Master, or the Ascended Grand Master, as they refer to him. Now, where should I begin here? I've got a few of their books. I've even applied to their website, and I've gotten their PDF, Volume 1 of Blood, Iron, and Sulfur. And I've been delving heavily into these books lately as a sorcerer, with the outlook of a sorcerer, and practicing warlock. Now, what I found interesting about the works, especially that by Sumnus Dreadwood, is very, very interesting. His work is very intelligent, very adequate, and, let's just say his shit is tight. Now, some of the books that I would recommend to you, especially if you're new to witchcraft or any form of sorcery, would be the left hand, the Path of the Left Hand. Or I should say just the left hand, the Cabal Grimoire of the Walking in Darkness by Sumnus Dreadwood. All right. And that's, see if you can read that here. This book I found very, very interesting. And I'm actually on my 9th time through this book. 9 times I've read this one book. And each time I read through it, I find something unique about it. Like right now, I am on page 68 in the book V, Hell on Earth. And I must say that each time I get to this point in this one book, I have to read down through the invocations a few times, because each time I do, I feel that power. I feel that energy transversing just through the words. And I have to sit there and stop and then go ground myself. Because when you're doing the incantations within this book, you're really feeling the old gods. You're feeling those of the wastelands, the void, basically, and it's very, very powerful. It's potent. So then once I've grounded myself, I go back in and I start, reading further. This book not only tells you a little bit about the Cabal from a historical point of view, but it also goes into tell you that, how should I say this? It's the tools that you're led to believe in most paths that you're going to need is not really what you need. Even in my own practices as a practicing sorcerer, I've come across this one thing that keeps coming to mind, and it keeps coming to its pinnacle of its cusp. And that is quite simply the fact that your altar is going to grow and shrink upon your practices. And I got into this particular book and started reading it for the first time about couple years back, I found out that not only could I feel that energy, but you really get a sense of the bullshit that is literally told to you by most groups out there of things that you will need. This does this, that does that, whatever. But once you've got into works like Paul Huzon, Mastering Witchcraft, for an example, his book, you read this book here, you get into the actual practices, you find out that you really don't need a lot of things for your rituals. You don't really need a lot of things for any spell casting or any form of ritualized ceremony, much like the big fancy, big black mass by in Satanism, or what's classified as a satanic black mass. You really don't need that fancy ass shit. And the more I read this book by Sumnus Dreadwood, the Grand Master, or the Ascended Grand Master of the Cabal, I have to agree with him on this. Literally, I have to agree. You really don't need a lot of things. And so I recommend the left hand to you, hands down. All right. And he goes into talking a little bit about the gods. He goes into the New Age stuff. He goes into a lot of different aspects just in this. And he even breaks things down for pronunciation, which is something I enjoy. I mean, I've always been fascinated with linguistics. So, I mean, especially learning new languages. And when I got into demonology, angelology, started getting into Enochian, getting into the celestial languages, the Theban languages, and then finally, further back I went, I ended up in Hellgate, the language of the Hellgate or Chaldeans. And the more you get into it, the more potent your magical becomes. So, I mean, especially with linguistics. And it's very, very interesting, the writing techniques compared to, within the runes compared to the actual alphabets and stuff like that. So, I mean, I recommend The Left Hand Path to you, or The Left Hand to You by Sumnus Dreadwood. The next book is another book that I am currently reading as well. And I love reading more than one book at once, especially by the same author, because you're getting a sense and a feel for him. But at the same time, you're seeing multiple different views of different levels at the same time. Now, I've been a practitioner now for 28 years. And so I'm able to stay focused and disciplined and, through my workings, that I can actually do something like this and read like 4 or 5 books at once. And this being in the martial arts also helps, because even in the martial arts or some form of like Tai Chi or yoga, some form of mental discipline is something that's very, very good, especially with meditation. In my case, I could sit for hours and meditation. So, and the next book is called The Eye of the Oracle, The Cabal Grimoire of Psychic Magic by Sumnus Dreadwood. And it looks like this. Okay. And what I find interesting about this book is not only does it go into a lot of the sonic or the Masonic aspects, but it goes into the gods. It goes into, I should say, the gods and goddesses of the void. And void work is something that I've done in the past, but I really haven't really delved fully into it, because I've been preoccupied with other stuff to the point where getting into the void is one thing. Anybody can do it, but especially if you're determined and you have that mental focus and know your shit. But in this case, I studied it for about a month and a half before I ended up moving on to a different practice which was similar to it. And I got sidetracked and just never went back to it. So the fact that here I am again reading a book about the void and about void magics. And I'm not the only one who's talked about the void. On YouTube, there are a few, how should I say this, a few practitioners who actually started out in Satanism and then went directly into void work. And one girl in particular talked a lot about surrendering the will of yourself, losing your identity and just giving into the void and just going into it. Now, there are two ways to look at that outcome. One, as a practitioner of sorcery, on one hand, you've got everything that you've studied, read, and practiced, telling you to do your homework on the gods that you're trying to contact. Prepare yourself for anything that could go wrong. Become focused, disciplined, do a spiritual cleansing and such, and get into that type of working. Whereas on the other hand, it's completely just giving into that void and delving into it with a belly flop, that face first plant into a wall type scenario, where it's just a matter of saying, well, you know what? I give up my will, my identity, and I follow you like a sheep, type mentality. So in this case, that would be reversed Christianity or reversed, how should I say this, reversed Hebraic systems, where you have to submit yourself to the masculine god, Jehovah or Allah. And a lot of people would look at this and say, you know what, I want nothing to do with it. I am not a sheep. I am not a member of herd conformity. But if you actually break it down, both of these two individuals, from reading this, from the Cabal's point of view, and that of, say, just your average occultist, or say, for example, somebody who actually practices void work from a former satanic point of view, you tend to see, how should I say this? You tend to see things from all aspects. So therefore, not only are you preparing yourself, but you know what you're getting into. You know that the deals and the contracts you make with these beings is worth the effort, or going to be worth the effort. Whereas not knowing your stuff and actually trying to delve into them on a personal level without having your shit squared away, okay, that's where you're going to get into trouble. But if you know what you're doing and you've studied, you practiced, you've experimented, and you've been able to get into that void work, then you're able to transgress, I guess you could say, and push yourself further into it. Okay. Now, in this particular working, I'm currently on page 24. The altar matter. And just below that is Azalea. Okay. Using basic breathing techniques. Now, anyone who has done meditation, yoga, or some form of martial arts will tell you flat out that breathing is a very good thing. It's like blood in some cases, because of the fact breathing is the essence of life. You're rechanneling yourself. You're recharging yourself through the breathing. As you're breathing out through your nose, or if you're breathing through your nose, you're literally breathing out through your mouth all that negative energy. So you're basically replacing that positive energy. Whereas in the martial arts, it's something different, because when you're learning how to breathe and move, you're preparing your body for a potential strike as well. So it's offensive and defensive. Yoga is more about relaxation and strengthening your body, toning it and within a form of muscle memory. So, I mean, even in meditation, you can focus on your breathing. 5 in, 5 out, holding it, and then 5 out. So to count. Whereas the more you do that, the more oxygen, you're oxidizing your blood cells so that you're able to go longer and longer and longer between breaths. But at the same time, while you're utilizing, say, for example, the visual workings, your eyes are focusing on that flame or that crystal ball, that divination bowl, and you're literally seeing what's coming through. You're beginning to pierce that veil. But at the same time, you're working here. You're working right here. And working in your own mind is mastering yourself. The old Sun Tzu said it best, in my opinion, is to know one's enemy is to know oneself, and to know oneself is to know one's enemy. This point of view is very, very clear. To know oneself is to know what your enemy is capable of. And by knowing your enemy and knowing what they're capable of, you're going to know what you're capable of in return. So you see, all this really play a part in occultism and sorcery. And I mean, it doesn't stop there either. It goes into ritual works, pact making. Your first pact through becoming a void disciple. You're going into the sonics. You're going into energy working. You're going into channeling the void. You're going into clairscendent in divination. You're going into a lot of different things just within this one book. So this is the second book that I would recommend by Sumnus Redwood. The third book is called The Black Scriptures, the foundational rituals of the Maergzjiran magic. It's a big word. It's hard to pronounce. By Sumnus Redwood. This one here is more about working with certain deities. It's more about working with your soul, pacts, deals, planes of existence, calling forth spirits, working with sigils, stuff like that. But it also goes into a little bit of sigil work, and I'm going to show you this. I don't know if you can see it here, but let me see here. Here we go. You see what I mean? Sigil work. And some of these sigils are very, very potent. Especially when summoning certain things like passion or say, for an example, dealing with, say, for example, these. Dealing with the types of void. The gods themselves. Notice this one here is similar to that of Astral. Instead of 2 things going down, it's going 3 things are going diagonal or side to side. And a lot of this stuff I've seen before, but it really comes down to what you're willing to do and what you're willing to put into it. And I've read this book now probably about 5 times, about 4 or 5 times. And each time I read it, I get something new from it, something that I've missed, something that I've misinterpreted. And when you really start applying all this material to your works, to your practices, you really get that sense of completion in some cases. Or not really completeness, but more of the acceptance of an objective. It's really potent magic. And what they're teaching is something that is unique in itself. I used to think that Anton Zandalavay's Book of Rituals was good. Especially speaking in Latin, cuneiform, Enochian magics. Working with certain deities of modern day right hand winged demonic beings or fallen angels. But when you really get into the various different traditions, styles, and formulations that are out there of practical magics, be it high witchcraft or shamanism, necromancy, what is classified as black magic or whatever, you start getting a much broader picture of the similarities, but also the differences. And when you get into the practices themselves, that's a whole nother thing, because then you're learning their ways, but you're also learning how to incorporate it into other avenues. Okay. I think I'm addicted to vanilla chai. But anyways, yeah, it's the price of working at Dunkin' Donuts. Yep. You end up getting addicted to the drinks. That's another habit that you got to break. But anyways, this time of year, who cares? But anyways, as for Summoners Dreadwood and the Cabal, if you're serious about black magic, if you're serious about sorcery, if you're serious about magical communions, especially with spiritual beings, if you're interested in, and dedicated fully in allowing yourself to become taken over by these beings, I would recommend the Cabal to you, because of the fact that the Cabal is something that is very unique, and they're very, very dedicated. They're not like other organizations that will sit there and tell you, well, you got to give us 666 or 666 or $166 66 cents type thing. No, or 500 or 600 or whatever. When I went to apply, I sent them a message stating that I'm interested in their way of life, their way of sorcery. And it's true, because I am dedicated to the magics. And the thing that I found interesting about this particular stuff is that when I sent that message, I told them that I'm sick of the drama, I'm sick of the chaos. And in much of the same way as Curtis Joseph once put it, is that there comes a time when you literally choose to rise above adversities, rise above the divisions that are set forth by human people, and you allow yourself to become forged in sorcery. And I used to be a solid secluded in my life's work, especially that of sorcery and magic. I was completely dedicated to magic. But over the last 5 years since I came onto Facebook, I've been attacked numerous times, called various different names, accusations were made, the whole kit and caboodle, and it's like, you know what? I'm done with this shit. And so basically, I made the decision to only teach the worthy, those who have actually proven themselves. For an example, Zaniel, the teacher of witchcraft, found in the grimoire of Armadale. He's one of the fallen angels that fell with Azazel and all the other fallen angels that have left or chose to leave the heavens to not only fornicate with the daughters of men, but the created Nephilim and so forth, as Ben Cayenne once put it. But I'm at that stage in my own career as a career sorcerer, dark sorcerer, that I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to literally take my sorcery to the next level. And I'm not going to let anyone get involved in that. I'm not going to let anyone hinder that process, because it's my choice to make. Now, those who wish to follow me, such as my disciples, my own apprentices, they're more than welcome to come, because I know that they are dedicated. They're completely committed to the magics and learning, through unity, rather than diversity or divisions, just like myself. So I would recommend the Cabal to any of these of my disciples, of my own students. Even my brother and my best friend has started delving into the Cabal. He actually sent me a sigillium the other day, the day before last, that was very, very potent. I could feel, just by the design of it, the energy that was flowing from it. So, and because of what's going on right now, it was like, you know what? Let's do this. So, the fact that he's getting into it, I've been reading these books again, including the PDF that the Cabal sent me through my Gmail. You know what? I'm loving this. I really am. It's stress free. It's all about the sorceries. It's all about the learning, the higher education. This is the best thing that I could do. Well, I wouldn't say the best thing I could do, because there's actually other avenues out there that are even better. But this one here, when it comes to sorcery, when it comes to magic, that is where I belong. That's what I'm about. And I'm completely dedicated to that. So I want to give a holler out to Sumner Streadwood and to the Cabal itself, and say, I give you 2 thumbs up. Your work is awesome. And as soon as I get some stuff together, I'll be sending you a care package through your website. All right. With that said, that's been my review of the Cabal, and that's that. This Dark Sorcerer is out. Until next time.